Today, we're diving into a really insightful book, Understanding the Dismissive Avoidant Attachment Style by Mindy Rivers. It aims to shed light on why we act the way we do in relationships, especially when it comes to feeling close to others. Noah, to start us off, can you explain what attachment theory is in very simple terms?
Certainly, Elliot. Think of attachment theory as a kind of gentle story about why relationships feel easy and others feel hard. It's not about blame, but about understanding what we learned about being close to people as we grew up. This learning shapes how we react in our everyday connections. It explains the difference between a relationship that feels steady and one that feels tense.
So it's like a blueprint we pick up early on. What's the main idea behind that blueprint, especially when things get tough?
The simplest truth is this. When you're upset, you need more than just a fix for the problem. You also need a comforting feeling from someone safe. Some people just naturally reach out for that comfort, but others might feel a knot in their chest when someone tries to get close emotionally, even if they care a lot. Attachment theory helps explain that these different reactions come from past experiences, not from a lack of caring.
That makes sense. It's not just about solving the issue, but about feeling safe while you're solving it or even before. Can you give an example of how this plays out right from the very beginning of life?
The clearest picture is with a baby. Babies have big feelings, but no words for them. If a baby is scared or uncomfortable, their body reacts like the world isn't safe. They can't calm down by themselves because they haven't learned how. They need an adult to come close and help them settle down just by being there in a comforting way.
So, if that adult presence is always there and steady, the baby learns a good lesson about relationships, right?
Exactly. When the comfort is steady, the baby learns the quiet lesson. Relationships are for getting comfort. When they cry, a caregiver comes and their fear slowly goes away. Over time, they start to expect that comfort is possible. This isn't a thought in their mind, but a feeling in their body that reaching out can bring relief, so there's no need to panic when distress comes.
But what if that comfort isn't steady? What if the caregiver is loving in some ways, but not always there emotionally? Maybe they respond with irritation or they're just overwhelmed.
Then a different lesson starts to form. A child might learn that when they show feelings, it brings tension, or that the caregiver is too overwhelmed to respond. When this happens again and again, the child learns that reaching out might not help, or it might even come with a cost, like disappointment. A child cannot stop needing comfort, but they learn to hide that need, because being quiet feels safer than being seen.
It sounds like they can't stop needing comfort, but they learn to hide that need. Is that where the idea of choosing a personality comes from and why it's often misunderstood?
Yes, that's where the misunderstanding often happens. People might think the child is choosing to be a certain way. But what's really happening is the child is learning how to cope emotionally in the world they have. If closeness feels warm and good, they stay open to it. If closeness brings strain, they learn to rely on distance. These aren't choices, but intelligent ways of adapting to what works for them.
So these early lessons really stick with us. How do they show up in adult relationships, especially when we're feeling stressed?
These old lessons become what feels normal. As we grow up, those expectations are still there in the background. They might look like confidence or independence, but underneath, there's often a very practical belief about what happens if you lean on someone. If support was reliable, leaning in feels natural. If support was tricky, leaning in can feel like stepping into danger.
Give me an example of that in action with adults.
Take two people coming home from a really hard day. One person might feel a strong urge to talk to their partner right away, finding comfort in that connection. For them, talking is how they breathe again. Another person with the same stress might want to go quiet and focus on something practical. It's not that they don't care, but a practical focus feels safer than opening a door to emotion.
And this is where confusion can start, even between people who love each other deeply. One partner might try to show love by moving closer, offering attention, but the other might feel that as pressure and pull away. That creates a cycle of confusion, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The partner moving closer feels rejected. The one pulling back feels crowded.
Attachment theory helps us see that both reactions come from learned expectations about safety, not from being selfish or mean. It's not about putting parents on trial either. Many caregivers did their best while carrying their own pain. A child doesn't need a dramatic story for this learning, just repeated experiences that teach them if reaching out is worth it.
But this isn't a life sentence, right? These patterns can change.
That's key. These patterns are strong because they've been practiced for a long time, but they can change when life gives you new, steady experiences of closeness. Change often happens through new, steady experiences where you risk a little honesty and find the other person stays kind. Or by understanding your own feelings better. Your expectations can shift from what happened long ago to what's happening now.
So understanding this brings relief and compassion, not shame.
Yes, if you pull back when emotions get high, it might be because distance once helped you feel steady. If you reach for reassurance quickly, it might be because closeness once made you feel safe. Neither is a moral failing. They're just ways of coping that made sense in the past. This knowledge turns confusing moments into something we can understand.
Okay, so attachment theory helps us understand the roots of our reactions. Now, the book talks about 4 main styles. Can you give us a quick overview of what those are and how they show up?
Certainly, these styles aren't neat boxes for a whole personality, but more like familiar ways we handle closeness when it really matters, when we need comfort, feel misunderstood, or when love feels uncertain. The 4 main styles are secure, anxious, avoidant, and fearful-avoidant.
Let's start with secure. What does that look like?
A secure attachment means feeling pretty safe with closeness. A securely attached person can be independent, but they can also lean on someone when life is hard. When upset, they believe talking will help, and they expect that being honest won't destroy the relationship. They might get jealous or need space sometimes, but they tend to return to connection instead of making it a fight.
And in daily life, how does that show up? They can say what they feel without blaming others. They invite closeness. If their partner needs space, they can feel uncomfortable, but trust that space doesn't mean rejection. If they need space, they ask for it without disappearing. It's like the relationship can breathe, and both people will come back together.
All right, so that's the ideal. What about anxious attachment?
Anxious attachment often comes from experiences where closeness felt important but wasn't always reliable. These individuals are very sensitive to small changes in tone, attention, or routine. When they feel uncertainty, their mind naturally looks for what it could mean. They may reach out quickly, not to cause drama, but to restore a sense of safety. Their fear is that love can disappear when they are not paying attention.
So if their partner texts less, they might panic?
Exactly. A partner might text less during a busy week, and the anxiously attached person might feel a wave of alarm. They may start imagining that the relationship is fading, and the feeling can become urgent. They might ask for reassurance or become very focused on the relationship. Deep down, they long to feel chosen in a steady way, the kind of choice that does not need to be proven every day.
Then there's the avoidant style. How does that differ?
Avoidant attachment comes from experiences where relying on others didn't feel safe or comforting. These individuals often value independence, not just as a preference, but as a kind of protection. They might have learned early that feelings were handled best in private, or they were praised for being strong. Over time, closeness can begin to feel like a situation where you might lose control of yourself, or where you will be asked to give more than you can.
So in adult relationships, what does an avoidant person look like?
They can be warm and charming, but they keep their inner world carefully guarded. They may enjoy romance in the beginning because it is lighter and less demanding, but as the relationship deepens, they can start to feel uneasy. They might pull back after a very intimate moment, not because they did not like it, but because it woke up a fear of being tied down or emotionally responsible for someone else. When conflict happens, they may want to end the conversation quickly or take space because too much emotional intensity can feel like being trapped.
And finally, fearful-avoidant, sometimes called disorganized. What's that about?
Fearful-avoidant attachment mixes parts of both anxiety and avoidance.
It can come from experiences where closeness was desired and also frightening, sometimes because the people who were supposed to provide comfort were also unpredictable. A fearful avoidant person may crave intimacy and feel deeply moved by connection, yet they can also become overwhelmed by it. They may move towards someone quickly and then retreat suddenly when it starts to feel too real.
That sounds like a real push and pull, a lot of inner conflict.
It is. For example, a person might feel lonely and seek closeness. And when they receive it, they might suddenly feel exposed. They might worry that the other person will hurt them, judge them, or leave them, and those worries can lead them to withdraw or become reactive. The conflict inside is not a lack of love, it is a tug of war between wanting connection and trying to stay safe.
So it's not always so clear-cut. People can be complex. Someone can be secure with friends, but avoidant in romance, or anxious with one partner and calmer with another.
Exactly. The style that shows up most strongly often depends on how safe the relationship feels and on what kind of closeness is being asked for. A person may handle everyday affection well, but struggle when someone asks for deeper emotional honesty.
It seems like each style has its own way of answering the question, when love feels shaky, do you move closer or pull away?
That's a great way to put it. Secure attachment tends to hold both closeness and space without panic. Anxious attachment tends to move toward. Avoidant attachment tends to move away. Fearful avoidant attachment can swing between the two, sometimes within the same day.
And these styles can clash in ways that cause real pain, especially when people don't understand what's happening. The book gives a common example of this collision.
Yes, it describes an anxious person feeling distance and reaching out, asking for reassurance or more time together. The avoidant person feels that reaching as pressure and pulls back to breathe. The anxious person then feels more alarm and reaches harder, while the avoidant person feels more crowded and retreats further. Neither person is trying to be cruel. They are each trying to find safety using the only path that has worked for them in the past.
Can security be learned, or are we stuck with our style?
Security can definitely be learned, but it is usually learned through experiences that feel steady over time. A securely attached partner can help an anxious person feel calmer, especially when reassurance is offered without irritation. A securely attached partner can also help an avoidant person feel less trapped, especially when space is respected and closeness is invited rather than demanded. Still, even with a secure partner, change is not instant because old patterns tend to surface in moments of stress.
What about two people with insecure styles? Can they build a good relationship?
It is possible, but it usually requires more care and more honesty. A fearful avoidant person often needs gentleness around both closeness and space because both can activate fear. An avoidant person often needs patience with vulnerability because they may not have practiced showing softer feelings. An anxious person often needs consistency because uncertainty can feel like a threat. When these needs are handled with respect, attachment patterns can soften.
So the goal isn't to judge ourselves or others with these labels, but to get a better understanding?
Precisely. Naming the 4 styles is not meant to give you a new way to judge yourself or your partner. It is meant to give you language for the part of love that feels automatic. When you can name what happens, you can slow down inside it. You can recognize that your reaction is not the whole truth. It is a protective response that has a history. That recognition can create a small pause. And in that pause, you can choose a different step.
This whole discussion really highlights why attachment styles matter so much in adult life, even long after childhood. It's not just about compatibility, is it?
No, it's much deeper. Attachment styles shape how you interpret closeness. They influence what you do when you are hurt, how you ask for what you need, and what you assume will happen when you let someone in. They become your default way of protecting yourself, even when protection is not the same as what you actually want.
And this shapes what we think of as normal in love.
Absolutely. If you grew up in a world where closeness was warm and reliable, you may naturally expect that a partner will be there for you and that you can be there for them. You might not fear ordinary needs. But if closeness was complicated, you may expect that love has a price, and you may brace for the moment when you will have to pay it.
This also affects how we view dependence, right? Not just money or practical things, but emotional dependence.
Yes, emotional dependence. You depend on your partner's care, their loyalty, their willingness to understand you, and their ability to stay present when things get hard. That kind of dependence can feel tender and beautiful to one person. To another, it can feel like stepping into a trap. If your early life taught you that needing someone leads to disappointment, you may work hard to keep your needs small so you never have to feel that disappointment again.
So how we read other people's actions is also influenced by our style.
Completely. A partner who needs time alone can feel respectful and healthy to someone who trusts the relationship. The same behavior can feel like rejection to someone who has learned that distance means danger. On the other side, a partner who asks for closeness can feel loving to someone who welcomes emotional talk. The same request can feel invasive to someone who has learned that closeness leads to criticism or demands they cannot meet. Two people can be describing the same moment and living in completely different emotional worlds.
It sounds like two people can be describing the same moment, but living in totally different emotional worlds.
Exactly. A common situation. Two people care about each other and both want the relationship to work. One person feels stressed and reaches out, wanting a conversation to feel close again. The other person feels stressed and wants quiet to feel steady again. If they do not understand attachment patterns, they may assume the worst. The one who reaches may assume the other does not care. The one who withdraws may assume the other is trying to control them. These assumptions can create hurt that is not actually about the love between them. Conflict is not only about solving a problem. It is also about staying connected while the problem is present. Some people feel safer when conflict is talked through right away because leaving it unresolved feels like emotional distance. Other people feel safer when conflict pauses because intense conversation can feel overwhelming. Attachment awareness helps couples understand that timing, tone, and repair matter as much as the content of the disagreement.
And our feelings?
Some people can feel sadness or fear and still stay connected to the people around them. They might cry in front of someone and experience it as relief. Others feel exposed when emotion rises. They might get quiet or distracted, or they might focus on facts and solutions because feelings in the room can feel like a loss of dignity. If you have an avoidant style, you may recognize the desire to keep your inner world private, not because you want to be distant, but because being seen can feel like being vulnerable in a way you do not fully trust.
Yes, they do. A friend might be hurt that you do not call often. Well, you feel your loyalty in a different way through showing up when it matters. At work, you might feel uncomfortable when a manager wants a personal check-in, or you might avoid asking for help because you do not want to be seen as needy. These are often relationship patterns playing out in a new setting.
It also affects the partners we choose, doesn't it?
It certainly does. People tend to be drawn to what feels familiar, even when what feels familiar is painful. An avoidant person may be drawn to someone who does not demand much at first because that feels like breathing room. An anxious person may be drawn to someone who feels exciting but inconsistent because the longing feels like love. Familiarity is not the same as health, but it can be hard to tell them apart until you understand your own patterns.
And this understanding can help us stop tolerating things that aren't good for us.
Exactly. If you learned early that your needs were too much, you may settle for relationships where your needs remain unspoken. If you learned early that love disappears easily, you may tolerate mixed signals. Understanding attachment can help you see what you have been normalizing, not to shame yourself, but to offer yourself a chance to choose differently.
So it creates a cycle, then, like an anxious person reaching, making an avoidant person pull away, which makes the anxious person reach harder.
That's a very common cycle. Over time, both people feel unseen. The anxious partner feels alone in their longing, and the avoidant partner feels alone in their need for space.
When you understand that cycle, you can stop treating each other as the problem and start treating the pattern as the problem.
This is especially important for avoidant attachment because it often looks like strength from the outside.
It does. Someone may seem calm and capable while quietly feeling strained by intimacy. They may be praised for being low drama, while inside they are working hard to keep their feelings contained. Over time, that containment can take a toll. Attachment awareness can help an avoidant person understand that the cost of distance is real, even when distance feels like relief in the moment.
So attachment styles offer a practical path toward healing. It's not just about understanding, but about learning new ways to respond.
Yes, an anxious person can learn to soothe themselves enough to ask for closeness without panic. An avoidant person can learn to stay present a little longer and to express needs without feeling weak. Even secure people can grow by understanding how to create safety for others without losing themselves.
There's comfort in knowing our relationship reactions aren't random, that they have roots.
Definitely. They were shaped by the ways you learned to stay connected while staying safe. When you see that, you can meet yourself with more patience. You can also begin to relate to others with more compassion because you can imagine that their reactions make sense too, even when those reactions hurt. Love tests whether you can stay connected when you feel uncertain, and understanding your patterns means you are not stuck repeating them.
Now, the book really focuses on dismissive avoidant attachment. Can you tell us how that's different from other types of avoidance? Why is it important to make that distinction?
It's a really important difference. People often use avoidant as a catch-all, but avoidance can come from different kinds of fear. Dismissive avoidant attachment often looks calm on the outside. These individuals appear self-assured, capable, and grounded. They take pride in being independent, and that pride is real. But this independence isn't just a value. It's often their main way of staying emotionally safe.
So it starts early in life, like other styles.
Yes, it often begins with learning that needing others doesn't work well. A dismissive avoidant child might have been cared for physically, but their emotional needs were downplayed. They might have been told they were fine when they were not, or sensed their sadness made adults uncomfortable. So they learn it's better to handle feelings privately and stop reaching out, not because they don't need comfort, but because reaching hasn't brought the warmth that makes it worthwhile.
And as adults, this turns into a certain kind of strength.
It does. They become very good at functioning even through pain. They can keep showing up, performing and solving problems, even if they hurt inside. They might see this as maturity, not emotional distance. This capacity often looks like success, which can make it hard to see the hidden cost.
What's the cost then?
The cost often shows up when relationships ask for emotional presence rather than competence. A partner might say, "I just want you to talk to me," and the dismissive avoidant person might genuinely not know what to say. They might become irritated, not because they want to be mean, but because irritation gives them a sense of power and distance when they feel exposed. They might also shut down, because silence can feel safer than saying the wrong thing.
How does that compare to the fearful avoidant style you mentioned earlier?
Fearful avoidant attachment often has a different emotional flavor. They long for closeness and feel anxious about losing it, yet they can also fear closeness and mistrust it. Their avoidance is often mixed with a sense of alarm. They might feel drawn to intimacy and then suddenly panic when it arrives. They worry about being hurt, being rejected, or being controlled.
So dismissive avoidance feels more stable, less anxious.
Yes, it often feels more stable and certain. The dismissive avoidant person may not feel the same obvious fear about abandonment. They might believe they are safer alone, and they might feel confident that they could walk away if they needed to. Their discomfort is often more about feeling intruded upon or obligated than about being left.
And this difference impacts how relationships play out. The book mentions something called deactivating strategies for dismissive avoidance.
That's right. Dismissive avoidants often use deactivating strategies, which means they find ways to turn down their attachment needs. They may focus on a partner's flaws to create emotional distance.
They may tell themselves the relationship is not that important. They may idealize freedom and treat commitment as a loss. They may keep their schedule full so that they rarely have to sit in the quiet vulnerability of needing someone.
It sounds like their emotional experience is also quite distinct.
Indeed. A fearful avoidant person might feel a lot of emotion and then shut down because it becomes too much. A dismissive avoidant person might feel emotion as something distant, as if it is happening behind a glass wall. They can still have deep feelings, but they might not recognize them until later, or they might experience them as physical tension rather than as sadness or longing.
So their relationship rhythm would also be different?
Yes, there may be closeness when the avoidant person feels in control, such as when they choose the time and place of intimacy. There may be distance when the partner initiates emotional conversation or asks for reassurance. The avoidant person may feel fine during light connection, then feel uneasy when the conversation turns toward needs, expectations, or the future. It is not that they do not want love. It is that love feels safest when it stays on terms they can manage.
This must be deeply painful for both people. The partner feels shut out, and the dismissive avoidant person feels pressured to be someone they're not.
Exactly. The avoidant person may feel guilty and also resentful, which is a confusing combination. They may want to offer love and feel unable to do it in the way their partner recognizes, which can lead to shame that they would rather not talk about. Dismissive avoidant people are often described as not needing anyone, but that is rarely the whole truth. They may show love through responsibility, through fixing problems, through practical support, or through steady presence when life is hard. The problem is not that they have no love, but that the love they learn to offer may not include emotional vulnerability, because vulnerability once felt unsafe.
And receiving care is also tough for them?
Yes, they may feel uncomfortable receiving help even when they need it. They might brush off kindness or change the subject. Being cared for can feel like debt, and debt can feel like danger. Refusing support feels safer, even when it creates distance.
So understanding these differences leads to kinder choices, not judgment?
Precisely. If you are dismissive avoidant, it can help to see that your need for space is not only a preference, it is often a response to a lifetime of learning that closeness brings pressure. If you love someone who is dismissive avoidant, it can help to see that their distance is not always a lack of love. It is often a way of calming themselves when intimacy feels intense.
And with this understanding, you can start to work with the pattern instead of fighting it.
You can. You can start to notice the moments when you feel the urge to pull away, and you can ask what you are protecting. You can learn to take space in a way that still stays connected, so your partner does not feel abandoned. You can practice small moments of emotional honesty that do not overwhelm you. The goal is not to erase independence. The goal is to make room for closeness without making it feel like a threat.
It sounds like there are a lot of myths about attachment that can get in the way of this understanding. What are some of the most common ones?
Yes, many myths can keep us stuck in shame or blame. One common myth is that attachment style is just a personality trait, like being outgoing or quiet. But attachment goes deeper. It shows up most clearly when you feel emotionally threatened, when you fear disconnection, or when you feel exposed. In those moments, the reaction often has less to do with what you like and more to do with what your history taught you is safe.
So it's not simply a preference then. Another myth I hear a lot is that attachment style is permanent.
That's a very damaging myth. People sometimes feel a heavy hopelessness, as if they've been handed a diagnosis that cannot change. Attachment patterns can be stubborn because they're learned early and practiced often, but they're not destiny. They're a set of expectations that can shift when life gives you repeated experiences that feel different.
Is there also a myth that one style is good and the others are bad?
Absolutely. Secure attachment gets treated as the prize, while anxious and avoidant styles get treated like problems to fix. But every style is a way of trying to stay safe in love. An anxious person reaches for reassurance because closeness calms them. An avoidant person reaches for distance because distance calms them. These are both understandable responses. Calling one good and the other bad turns a human story into a moral story, which only creates shame.
And for
avoidant people, there's a painful myth that they don't want love at all.
That's particularly painful because it makes avoidant individuals feel unseen, and it makes their partners feel hopeless. Many avoidant people want love deeply, but they want it in a way that does not cost them their sense of self. If they pull away, it is often because intimacy is touching an old fear, not because affection is missing.
And the opposite myth for anxious people?
Some people believe anxious individuals are needy in a childish way, as if they are trying to be rescued rather than loved. In reality, anxious attachment is often the product of real inconsistency in the past. Their desire for reassurance is not an attempt to control, it is an attempt to feel safe enough to relax and be present. When this is misunderstood, the anxious person often feels embarrassed for having needs they did not choose.
It's not about blaming parents either, is it?
No, understanding your early experience can be done with compassion for everyone involved. A caregiver can love a child and still be emotionally unavailable in ways that shape the child. The goal is not to find blame, but to understand.
And it's not just obvious trauma that creates insecure attachment.
That's another important myth to clear up. Attachment patterns can form in quiet households where feelings are not talked about, where comfort is offered only for physical problems, or where tenderness is rare. A child can learn to be self-sufficient because it feels easier than being disappointed.
So simply knowing your style doesn't magically fix everything, right?
Correct. Knowing your style is a start, not an end. It is not only an idea in your mind, it is also a set of reactions in your body and habits in your relationships. Change also comes through repetition. Naming your style is a beginning, not an ending.
There is also a myth, especially online, about avoiding avoidant people altogether.
That kind of advice can come from real hurt, and it can become a harsh story that erases the humanity of avoidant individuals. Many avoidant people are capable of deep love, loyalty, and growth, especially when they are willing to reflect on their patterns. The question is not whether someone has an avoidant style, but whether they can take responsibility for how their style affects others.
And secure people aren't perfect either, are they?
No. Security does not mean you never get jealous or make mistakes. The difference is often that they have a stronger sense that they can repair. They can talk, listen, and return to connection more easily. Mythologizing security as perfection misses the point that it's mainly about a willingness to stay engaged rather than run or cling.
So how do these myths affect couples, especially when they're arguing?
It can be tempting for one partner to say, if my partner would just stop being avoidant, we'd be fine. But most relationship pain is created by the dance between two people's protections. One person's pursuit can intensify the other person's withdrawal, and the withdrawal can intensify the pursuit. When both people can see this dance, it becomes easier to stop blaming and start changing what happens in the moment.
So the book offers a kinder story, one where our reactions make sense in context?
It does. It says you learn to protect yourself in ways that helped you survive emotionally. You can honor the intelligence of those protections while also noticing the cost. Letting go of the myths helps you become more curious about what is happening inside you and inside the people you love. It's about seeing that your need for space or your reaching for closeness are both human and can change.
It sounds like dismissive avoidant people are especially prone to being misunderstood. What are the main reasons for this?
A big reason is that they often appear very confident and capable. They're good at handling life and solving problems. They may not appear fragile, and when they pull away from intimacy, the withdrawal is seen as a choice rather than as a protective reflex. The partner might think, if you can handle everything else, why can you not handle this? And the question makes sense. Still, it misses how different emotional dependence can feel from practical competence.
So their love language isn't always emotional.
Exactly. They often show care through actions, fixing things, planning, providing stability, being loyal. For some partners, this feels deeply loving. For others, it feels incomplete because they long for emotional presence or conversations that create a sense of being known. When the partner asks for those things, the avoidant person may feel criticized, as if their efforts are invisible.
So when a partner says, I just want you to open up, What is a dismissive avoidant person
The partner may mean, I want to feel close to you. But the dismissive avoidant person may hear, you are not good enough the way you are. That interpretation can come from a long history of feeling that emotional needs lead to judgment. Being asked to open up can feel like being asked to dismantle the very structure that helped them survive.
It's also confusing because their withdrawal can happen after good moments, not just conflict.
This is a key misunderstanding. Partners expect distance after conflict, but not after a tender evening of connection. The next day, the avoidant partner might feel a strong urge to be busy or emotionally flat. The partner then feels confused and hurt, like the closeness was not real. For the avoidant person, the closeness was real, but it also activated a fear of being too needed or too emotionally responsible.
And how they handle conflict.
When emotions rise, many try to get back to calm quickly. They might change the subject, make a joke, focus on logic, or ask to take a break. To a partner who wants emotional repair, this can feel like avoidance or dismissal. From the avoidant person's side, the intensity can feel like a wave that will not stop. The goal is often self-control, not cruelty. Their language itself can be a source of misunderstanding.
They may speak in short sentences when emotional topics come up. They might say they are fine when they are not sure what they feel. They might describe their partner as overreacting, not because they want to insult them, but because they genuinely experience strong emotion as overwhelming and hard to manage.
And the belief that dismissive avoidants don't have feelings?
That's a painful misunderstanding. Many do have deep feelings, but they do not always experience those feelings in an obvious way. They may notice tension in their body rather than sadness in their heart. They may feel irritated rather than frightened. When a partner is crying, some avoidants want to help but freeze, unsure of what to do, because old discomfort rushes in.
It also sounds like they need more time to process emotions.
Yes, some people can talk while they feel. Others need to feel first and talk later. Dismissive avoidants often fall into the second category, but their processing may happen under the surface. They may not want to talk in the moment because they cannot find their words. A partner wanting immediate conversation can interpret this as stonewalling.
Boundaries must also play a role.
They set boundaries quickly when they feel crowded, insisting on alone time or private space. To a partner who equates closeness with togetherness, this can feel like rejection. In truth, many dismissive avoidants can be more loving when their boundaries are honored because they feel less trapped. The problem is that boundaries and distance can look identical from the outside.
And the initial charm can be misleading.
Early on, the stakes feel lower, so they're free to be attentive and enjoy the excitement. But as the relationship deepens, they may begin to pull back. The partner can feel tricked, like the early version was fake. Often it was not fake, it was real closeness that felt safe because it did not yet carry the weight of expectation. This dynamic can create a story in the partner's mind that the avoidant person is selfish.
And what about breakups? They can seem fine, which is also confusing.
They might move on quickly or act as if it did not matter. Sometimes this is a true relief. Other times it is a form of emotional protection, where grief is pushed down because it feels unbearable to face. The partner who was left can feel erased. But the dismissive avoidant person may later feel waves of sadness they cannot explain, sometimes months later, when they are alone.
So understanding these misunderstandings isn't about ignoring the hurt, but finding a clearer path forward.
Exactly. Dismissive avoidants often need their emotional world to be approached with patience because pressure tends to create more retreat. They often respond better to calm invitations than to demands. For dismissive avoidants themselves, realizing they are misunderstood is not proof that they are unlovable. It is often proof that their style of coping is hard for others to read. Naming what is happening inside gives their loved ones a map and helps them stay connected without feeling trapped.
This whole approach really frames attachment theory as explaining patterns, not personal failures. Can you elaborate on that crucial distinction?
This is one of the most important gifts attachment theory can offer. Many people come to it after years of confusion, feeling like they are broken because they repeat the same relationship problems. Attachment theory says you are not broken, you are patterned, and your patterns were shaped by what you lived through. A personal failure story is a judgment, saying you are too needy or too cold. But attachment theory says behavior is often a response to expectation. If you understand the expectation, you can understand the behavior.
So patterns have a logic to them, even if it's old logic.
Yes, exactly. The logic might be outdated, but it once made perfect sense. For example, if you learn comfort was not available, it made sense to stop reaching for it. If emotion led to criticism, it made sense to keep emotion private. None of these responses mean you have a defective heart. They are evidence of adaptation.
And shame gets in the way of change, doesn't it?
It does. When you believe you are fundamentally flawed, you tend to protect yourself from being seen. You might hide your needs or fears. You may also become defensive when someone points out a pattern. Attachment theory softens that defensive loop by offering a more compassionate explanation. It says, this is what you learned instead of this is who you are.
How does this play out in a dismissive avoidance reactions? If a partner asked for more closeness, the dismissive avoidant might feel a surge of irritation or numbness. If they tell themselves, I'm a bad partner, they might withdraw further out of shame. But if they instead understand the pattern, they might recognize that the request has triggered an old fear of being obligated or overwhelmed. That recognition does not magically fix the moment, but it creates a chance to respond with more honesty and less self-attack.
So patterns also explain why we choose certain partners?
They do. If you have an anxious style, you may be drawn to people who feel exciting and unpredictable, mistaking the emotional high of longing for love. If you have an avoidant style, you may be drawn to people who feel low demand at first, mistaking the calm of distance as proof of compatibility. Attachment theory helps you notice that you might be choosing familiarity rather than health, not because you are foolish, but because your body trusts what it knows.
It seems like understanding these patterns is about seeing the rhythm across time.
Yes, a pattern story looks at the rhythm, like closeness followed by distance. When you see the rhythm, you can start to work with it. You can prepare for the moment when the pattern usually turns, which gives you more power than trying to fix yourself after the fact.
And it places our behavior in a relationship context, so it's not always one person's fault.
Exactly. Many relationship problems are created by the way two protective styles interact. An anxious person reaches for closeness to feel safe. An avoidant person takes space to feel safe. When those moves collide, both people can feel threatened. That understanding can lower blame and open the door to repair.
So it allows for accountability without shame.
It does. Understanding a pattern does not excuse it. If you withdraw without explanation, your partner can still be hurt. But attachment theory invites you to take responsibility without collapsing into shame. You can say, this is what I do when I'm scared, and also, I want to learn a different way. That combination is powerful.
For dismissive avoidants who often pride themselves on being rational, this must be particularly insightful.
It's crucial for them. They often see their withdrawal as a mature, neutral response. But attachment theory helps them see that withdrawal is often a protective response, not a neutral one. It highlights that they may be trying to protect their sense of control, and control can become a substitute for intimacy. When they see that, they can choose closeness in ways that still feel respectful to their need for steadiness.
It also explains why you can genuinely love someone but still push them away.
Love is a feeling and an intention, but attachment patterns are often automatic. You might feel tenderness for your partner and still go quiet when they want an emotional conversation. These contradictions can lead to harsh self-judgments. A pattern explanation helps you hold both truths. You can love someone and also protect yourself in ways that create distance. Seeing that clearly is the first step toward changing it.
And this way of thinking reduces the fear of being uniquely damaged.
It does. When you see your reactions as patterns, you realize many people have similar responses shaped by similar experiences.
That does not make your pain smaller, but it can make you feel less alone. It can also help you speak about your struggles in a way that invites compassion. When you say, "This is my pattern," you are not confessing a defect. You are sharing a human story about learning and protecting.
So the purpose of this book and understanding these patterns is to bring clarity and tenderness to our relationship stories.
Exactly. If you are reading this book, you might be tired of repeating the same relationship patterns or trying to understand someone you love who seems to pull away. This book is here to bring clarity and tenderness to that story so you can stop treating it like a mystery and start treating it like something human that can be held and changed.
So for some, it brings relief.
Yes, relief from feeling like closeness has a hidden cost. You may long for love, but still feel tense when intimacy is asked for. You may believe you are simply not made for love. This book is meant to replace that harsh conclusion with a kinder and more accurate one.
And for partners of dismissive avoidance, it brings understanding.
It helps them understand what might be happening inside their partner, not so they can excuse hurt, but so they can stop taking everything as proof that they are unlovable. It also helps slow down the loop of push and pull, creating space for understanding to enter.
And it gives us language for experiences that often feel wordless.
Dismissive avoidants often struggle to name what they feel, and their partners struggle to explain what's missing. The words in this book help you describe what is happening without it sounding like an accusation. When you can say, "I feel crowded," or "I feel alone," and connect it to a pattern, you're more likely to create empathy instead of defensiveness.
It also helps us look at our history without cruelty.
It allows you to look at the conditions that shaped you with respect, recognizing you did what you had to do. The goal is not anger, but understanding what you learned about closeness so you can update those lessons as an adult.
And a clearer picture of dismissive avoidant attachment itself.
This book helps you see the difference between healthy independence and protected distance. Dismissive avoidance often looks like strength, but it can hide loneliness and fear. By understanding it specifically, you can keep what is good and soften what is hurting you.
And it explains why change feels so hard, especially when vulnerability feels like danger.
Yes, people often think you should just communicate more. But if your body reads vulnerability as danger, those instructions are impossible. The book explains the lived experience behind that resistance, helping you approach change with patience rather than force. It helps you recognize early warning signals, like feeling restless when someone asks to talk, which are information about your inner state, not proof the relationship is wrong.
And a gentler way to think about needs.
Dismissive avoidants often believe needing is weakness. They might feel proud of not asking for much. This book helps them see that having needs is human, and expressing them does not have to cost their independence.
For partners, it also offers ways to protect their own heart.
Understanding someone's attachment pattern does not mean sacrificing yourself. If you're always reaching and met with distance, you can start to doubt your worth. This book helps you keep your dignity and understand what is yours to do and what is not yours to carry.
And what healthy closeness can look like for an avoidant person.
Intimacy doesn't have to mean constant togetherness. It can mean honesty, reliability, and the ability to repair. It means being able to take space and still stay connected. This book helps you imagine a real and respectful version of closeness, not one that demands you become someone else.
So it offers a realistic path for growth.
A realistic path built through small moments of honesty and steady follow-through, learning to name what you feel without being overwhelmed, and hearing your partner's feelings without seeing them as demands. It gives you permission to be a whole person, to make room for tenderness without losing your strength, and to hold your independence while allowing yourself to be known.
This has been such an illuminating conversation, Noah, helping us understand these complex ideas from Mindy Rivers' book in such simple terms. Thank you.
My pleasure, Elliot.
It's truly about finding compassion and understanding for ourselves and others in our relationships.
If this discussion resonated with you, consider sharing it with someone who might also find clarity and comfort in understanding attachment styles.